Hi, how are you? My name is John, and welcome to Register a New Company. Basically, I'm just going to take you through our website quickly, just so that you can see what we offer, what you need to get a company set up in Ireland, and some other bits and pieces that you just need to be made aware of. So we offer three types of packages. So the first one is your bog standard company formation, and this is what's included in that pack. Now, we accept payments by either Cresco.com, which is a one-off payment by your bank to our bank. It's the quickest way for us to be paid, and it's also the cheapest way for us to be paid, as there are no fees. Or if you would like to pay by card, you can use Stripe.com. This is the full pack, and this is normally what you would need if you want to remain compliant for the first 6 months. And we also include business address, company registered office address, company secretary, and bits and pieces like that. And then the third pack is if you are a non-EU and you want to set up a company in Ireland. Basically, this is everything that you need, again, including the Section 137 insurance bond that you need for 2 years. So if you have any queries or questions regarding any of these bits, you can reach out to us. Our details are below. Just a couple of testimonials, a couple of bits and bobs. So basically how it works is, you pay for the service that you want, and we will ring you back then, and we will go through the actual form with you to answer any questions that you have, and just to make sure basically that you have set the company up with the right structure, right shareholders, right shares being issued, authorized shares being issued, and we'll give you a bit of help and some hints, just to make sure that you're fully compliant. The information that we require. So again, it's just simple questions, the personal details of the directors, shareholders, residential address, date of birth, nationality, occupation. We also need ID and proof of address. So these are basically just the things to consider. So obviously, first thing that you need to consider is the company name. Now, the CRO, if a company was set up today and in a year's time, it was struck off or closed down or liquidated or whatever, that company name is still protected for 20 years. So it's harder to get company names. So like we would always check with the CRO if the company name that you want is allowable and is okay. Now, if they say that it's okay, there's still no guarantee that when the CRO register your documents that the name will be okay or not, because someone else could have submitted paperwork with a similar name beforehand. And the company activities, so basically that's what the company is going to do. It's called the NACE code. Now, since the Companies Act 2014, the NACE code is purely for statistical purposes. A company can do whatever it wants to do once it's fully legal. The minimum requirement for a limited company is one director, and there also must be a company secretary, but it can't be the same person. So you need minimum one director over the age of 18, but you can have two, three, four, five directors, whatever you need. The directors also need to be resident in the EEA. If they're not, you will need to get a nominee resident Irish director, or you will need to get an insurance bond. Appoint a company secretary. So, company secretary can basically be an individual or it can be a company. It can be the same person as the director if there are two directors, but it can't be the same person as a director if there is only one director. Now, if it's a case that you need a company secretary, we have various packages that we can offer there for a nominee company secretary. Every company needs to have at least one shareholder. So the shareholder is the person who owns the company. The shareholder can be an individual or it can be a company as well, depending on the structure that you want to set up. And the different shareholders can have different shares, different share classes with different rights and stuff like that. But a lot of the companies in Ireland that will be set up would be normally just 50-50 shareholders, or 25-25-25-25% shareholders, or a variation of that. The authorized share capital, this is basically the amount of shares that the company can issue. Now, Companies Act 2014 has made some changes to that. So normally what I would do is I would advise you to speak to a company formation agent, because what we've seen is we would see some people who would come along and they would issue authorized shares of 100 or 1,000, and then in 6 months' time they look for investment and they need to change their authorized share capital by increasing the amount. Another thing that we would see as well is that with the issued share capital, some people will come in and they will issue one share for one director. And again, that's going to cause problems if you want to bring investment further down the line. One thing that we see a lot of with tech companies is tech companies will try and bootstrap the company formations by doing it themselves. They will issue 100 shares, they will have authorized share capital of 100,000, and they will think then that everything is fine, and in most cases it is fine. But then you go and you look for investment, and the solicitors will look at your company registration documents, and they will need to rechange the share classes, the authorized share classes, and by you trying to save 200 or 300 quid has in fact ended up costing you €5,000 plus VAT by the time the solicitors have issued new shares, new share certificates, minutes of meetings, and stuff like that. So that's why it is cheaper to go down the do-it-yourself route with company formations. But I would advise you to speak to a company formation agent, because by setting the company up at the correct way at the start will save you money if you are taking investment at a future date. Um, so the companies, each company in Ireland is required to have a registered office address. Now, again, what some people will do is the registered office address can be your home address, or it can be an office address, or it can be a virtual office provider. So what we would normally advise clients, especially with COVID and stuff like that, is a lot of clients now are working from home, but they don't want their apartment or their personal address on the company register. So what we would normally say to people is register, use a virtual office address for the company's registered office address. And then when it comes to registering the company for tax, the revenue commissioner will allow you to have two addresses, your registered office address and your business trading address. So your business trading address can be your apartment. So that way you're always getting revenue documents to your apartment. It's not in the public domain. So if anyone does a search, the address that's in the public domain is your registered office. Company register and seal. Every company is legally required to have a company register and seal. Now, in the last couple of years, a lot of companies don't bother with the register and seal, and that's fine. Where you will need the company seal is if you are taking over a lease. Solicitors will normally make it that it's a requirement that you seal the document and sign it as a director. Where the company register will come into play is if at any stage in the future you are taking on investment, Enterprise Ireland or private shareholders or investors, their solicitors will normally do their due diligence, and part of that due diligence will be looking at the company register to see, is there a company register, who owns shares, what type of shares, when the shares were bought, how much for. If there is no company register, the solicitors will need to recreate a company register, and how they will do that is they will look at the documents that are filed with the CRO, and then they will complete the company register based on that information. A company register can be a physical book called a company register, or it can be an Excel sheet with all the information in the Excel sheet, such as who the directors are, who the secretary who the shareholders are, where the share certificates are, copies of the share certificates in a Word document, and minutes of meetings and stuff like that of important decisions made during the course of the year. Now, incidentals. Basically, a couple of incidentals. The CRO website is very good, and you can go and you can register a company yourself and you'll get a one-page constitution. But now the one-page constitution is perfect for a lot of companies. But if you want to bring on investors or bits and pieces like that at a later stage. The one-page company register won't be, it won't have things in the constitution that you can actually do. So what normally happens is that you will need to submit and amend the constitution, and again, then you're into increased fees and stuff like that. Whereas if you speak to a formation agent at the very start, most formation agents' constitutions are normally about 10 to 14 pages in length, and they will cover a lot of things about proxies at meetings, auditors, directors, quorums, share buyback, and stuff like that. Whereas the CRO, which is a one-page constitution, doesn't have any of these things. So again, another reason why we would be advising clients to speak to a formation agent or their accountant about setting up the company. Just incidentals that we would normally recommend as well is two main ones. We recommend that all company shareholders have a shareholders agreement. It can be as basic or as complicated as you like. But what we would include, excuse me, in the shareholders agreement is things like what is expected from each shareholder, what happens if in 6 months or a year's time one of the shareholders wants to sell their shares, and can they sell it to a third party or to the other shareholder? What is expected of that shareholder? We have seen cases, and you will have seen it as well, cases where there have been verbal agreements in place, and 5 or 10 years further, or 5 or 10 years down the line, investors are come in, or someone has come in to buy the company, and then all of a sudden, a person will put their hand up and say, "Well, actually, I have a verbal agreement with that company that I'm entitled to 5% of their shares or 10% of their shares because I provided software when they were strapped for cash." So it's good to have a shareholders agreement where everything is in writing, everyone knows exactly what's expected of each person, and a shareholders agreement is normally done at the start when everyone is in agreement. So it is handy to have a shareholders agreement in place just to rule out any complications down the line. The second thing that we would always advise clients to do is to actually have a will. You now own shares in a limited company, and basically what happens if something happens to you, God forbid, with your shares, the company is in limbo. So we would advise you to do a will to say, right, this is what I want to happen with my shares if something happens to me, and your estate will be made aware of it because it is in your will. If you have any queries or questions, please come back to us. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.